I'm so excited to be with a very special guest tonight. Kalden Lodoe organized the Kala Chakra for the World Peace in 2011 at the Verizon Center in Washington, D.C. The 2 weeks Buddhist ceremonies and teaching he presided over by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, was joined by 100,000 people from all over the world, thus becoming the largest Buddhist ceremony dedicated to bringing about world peace in the capital city of this most powerful nation. He's a firm believer in the human potential of changing the world into a better place. And he went on to launch and be one of the key senior people at Radio Free Asia. We're going to talk about that too. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has said, "I listen to Radio Free Asia every day with my breakfast." Is that true? Mm-hmm. Well, welcome. First question. What was it like to disrobe? I kind of like that word, disrobe. That's such a powerful robe. How emotional was that as an event in your life?
Well, good evening, everybody. You can hear me well, right? It's very happy to be here. Thank you, and thank you, everybody. Your question. It didn't really happen all of a sudden like that. You know, there was a transition period. I went from monastery to England. England corrupted me.
We know England.
Well, it was a challenging thing. Few things happening. The first, I enrolled myself into a school. Until then, from 1977 to 1988, I was supported by a very specific members of community in a monastery. Leashing out in the London, street of London is totally different, you know. And I realized that I was going to school not wearing robes. So there are a lot of confusions. I was only 21 then. What do I want to do? Do you want to be a monk or I don't want to be a monk? What do I do if I don't want to be a monk? Then my belief system is that for me, the monastic system is sacred for me. If I want to be a monk, then I want to be a good monk. If I can't be a good monk, I don't want to be a monk because I have no right to dilute. So that gave me strength.
Were you worried about your parents, what their parents
would
say?
Oh yes, I was not only worried
that
about
sounds like such an honorable thing to be a monk.
Yeah, not only worried about my parents, I worried about my society.
Yeah.
Those days, the society would look down on me. But then, of course, the decision I took became final. And I didn't go back to India for a while, you know, so the parents didn't know what's happening, so it's good. We didn't have cell phones, so we didn't have internet. So you just write letters.
Like, hi, how are you? I'm doing great.
Exactly.
So when you think about your time as a monk, and you're a boy, and you've left your parents' home, and you're in this incredible monastery with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, what was that like? What was a day like? I mean, we want to know. You wake up in the morning, what does a boy do left in that world?
It's interesting, you know, I was only 10. The hardest part to depart was my mom. My mother was very emotional. So my father was much stronger, of course, and then he would be coming with me. But then I was very lucky to have a teacher who substituted both my father and mother. So he never let me feel lack of my parents' love. And then I had another teacher, you know, who would help me wash my clothes, even help me take showers and things like that. But that honeymoon period ended soon because I have to now go into a regiment.
Yeah, what's that like?
Oh, that's not easy.
So what is a regiment like? What's a day? What time do you wake? Like, go through a day in the life of a monk and under the Holiness.
Soon after I arrived in Dharamsala. Dharamsala is located in north of India where His Holiness the Dalai Lama lives. December was the month we arrived, and then the regular regiment started probably in March. So I would get up at 5 o'clock. That was the hard part. But then, you know, they tried to let us go to sleep early. And the getting up part was a difficult thing. Then the biggest test is your capacity of memorization. From 1977 till 1981, I must have memorized thousands of folios of pages of Buddhist philosophical text. So luckily, my memorization capacity was so good, so it was not that hard. But again, starting from 5 o'clock,
It's 10,
memorization,
11.
then you have to read it out, out of what you have memorized to your teacher, and it's like collecting it. It's not, you cannot forget it, because at the end of the day, after thousands of folio pages, you have to read it in the community, assembly, and then finally you have to recite this in His Holiness's palace. Whether His Holiness listens everything or not, but there's a fear among us that His Holiness might be listening, so you can't make mistakes.
Right.
So not only memorization. So that's a very interesting part. Now thinking back, it's a very good exercise for my brain. Gradually, we will go into philosophical classes where you would be taught how to meditate, how to preserve your vows that you have taken, learn to chant, paint, draw,
Did you
ritual
find
dances.
that everybody was as happy as you were, or did you find that people...
I was not very happy, no.
I mean, it sort of seems like once you get there, you're supposed to be honored and happy,
Oh yeah, I mean,
And
there's a
like-
constant reminder
that this
of,
is like special.
yeah, it's very special, especially getting accepted into His
Yeah.
Holiness Monastery is not easy.
And that's a bit,
Yeah.
and you're in the #1 monastery.
Yeah, this
There's
is what I
other
always,
ones, but this is the
after
number
coming to
one.
United States, I always say, I've never been to Ivy League the colleges, but I went to Ivy League monastery.
Right, and his is #1. When you crossed into the normal world, like I'm going to say, that's all of us, of course, what surprised you?
The transition was not that easy. Okay, a typical thing is, what is not being a monk? What is disrobing a monk? Yeah, I fell in love with a woman who's older than me. We broke up. Oh, that was heartbreaking. There was, I wish I didn't do that. It's too late then. But I think it's a learning process. This is the life I've chosen. But very important thing, because of my training in the monastery, how to control your emotion helped me tremendously in making the right choices. When you face a lot of difficulties, you always see, it helped me to see the realistic part of life. Right now, I always tell, after all these years, I never become too happy, nor become
Stages,
very unhappy. So I think it's because of my training at the monastery. So in the transition, it helped me greatly.
I can imagine it.
Yeah.
When you had access to the Dalai Lama yourself,
Mhm.
and so when you look back on the access of the Dalai Lama as a young boy, and the Dalai Lama today, is there an inner voice that the Dalai Lama speaks to you?
Oh yes, constantly.
What's he telling you?
Almost.
Don't go with that girl.
Or where's that girl?
Yeah, where is it? Like, get her back.
I think the most important thing is to constantly look into yourself. And death is a process of living. So therefore, live a meaningful life.
I like that. I think that's really important. Live a meaningful life and understand death as part of that. That's really beautiful. Are you able to share that with West? Do you see Western people thinking like that? Do you think that Western
Well, I'm
people
sure
understand that?
for most part, generally speaking, all human beings have same emotions. Like we all here share the basic qualities of human beings are same.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Asian, you are Irish, and just very superficial designated differences. So therefore, deep desire that we have is why did we all come here? Crave for our happiness. You wanted to get away from our busy life and came here. So the craving for happiness is the same thing. Therefore, not wanting suffering is very basic commonalities that we have. So in that sense, everybody wants to live a meaningful life, but when I first came into the West, and then by living, having more friends, more interacting with people, I have a sense that people, especially in the United States, the freedom that the United States grants for all of us, I have not experienced. I was born in India, I've studied in England, I've lived in Brazil, I've studied in Spain, but a true sense of freedom, of personal enhancement, or anything else, the great opportunity this country gives us is only, I never had that sense until I came to the United States. I think in that sense, a lot of people do take for granted. So that actually dilutes the philosophical, making distinctions, philosophically making a distinctions between want and need. I think if we can have a true grasping within ourselves of clearly making the distinction between want and need, I think we'll be much happier.
So that kind of is perfect because you're still practicing, of course, Buddhism.
Yes.
So is Buddhism a path to happiness?
I don't think Buddhism as a religion is part of happiness because everybody has a choice. I don't, of course I'm a Buddhist, but I don't think
it's not the only
Buddhism
path.
could be the best path or the only path. But more importantly, there should be the human path. Love, compassion, forgiveness, this has nothing to do with religion. Everybody can practice. So I think that is more important. For me, see, when we talk about the religion, I think it's very individual thing. You know, it depends on your own the background, faith, a lot. It depends on a lot of things. So it's a choice. But since we are social animals, we have to live with each other. Therefore, practice of love, practice
that'd
of
be
compassion,
helpful.
practice
Yeah,
of forgiveness,
definitely.
these are necessary.
Yeah.
Religion is not.
It's true. If you could think now today, do you still talk to the Dalai Lama?
I'm very fortunate to have a lot of meetings with him, yes.
That's good. What's the greatest gift he gave you?
I'm sure there are a lot of things, but I think his guidance and his love. Because his love makes me a fuller person, and that love can be reflected onto a lot of people. So I think that's because his love I can reflect onto others for more people, and giving it back to people is the greatest gift.
I like that. So, I want to come forward a little bit and talk a little bit about Radio Free Asia. That's really something to be quite proud of, I think. So everybody knows Radio Free Asia. I want to make sure everybody hears me. So the question is to kind of talk about that experience, how you got there, what is it you're accomplishing through this?
So
I understand the Dalai Lama also listens to this, as I said before, every day.
It's interesting, while before we were
I
talking
know.
about you're from fashion,
Yeah.
and you're in hospitality.
I know.
I was
Hard to believe.
Yeah, I was a trained monk and became a journalist.
So you brought certain tools. That's the thing to think about. So
Because
why?
now this is very interesting. When back in 1996, when I went to do the exam, to the test for Radio Free Asia, there were hundreds of people in New York. It's a prestige job, and we know it's important. Radio Free Asia is a surrogate radio station established by U.S. Congress. We broadcast 9 different languages into different countries, including Tibet, China, Hong Kong, Eastern Turkestan, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, all these countries. So, there were people with degrees and master's degrees, and I didn't have anything. I had my only degree was teaching Spanish as a second language. That's about it, and the education in the monastic system doesn't really count in this country. So, but I did the interview. But I think because in a monastery, in Tibetan monastery, we not only get into ritualistic aspect, meditation, silent meditation, but we study a lot. A lot of this education are based on logic. So therefore, I was very quick in doing interviews, and a lot, if you see in the Tibetan culture primarily is based on Buddhist concepts of love, compassion, etc. So I could bring something extraordinary that other people with degrees couldn't, because they didn't have my background of education. So that helped me.
Very much so.
I started, this is going to be my 19th year.
Wow. Where's the base?
Washington,
That's
D.C.
what I thought.
I started as a regular broadcaster. For 9 years, I was the Washington correspondent. So I learned a lot about U.S. Functioning of U.S. Government. And now I'm a managing senior editor. So I have more power now.
That's so great. So this is an interesting question. It's the 21st century. And you met my friend Don, my friend Don Farber, who was here in spring.
Yes.
Is an incredible photographer, and he was one of our guest speakers. Remember him? He had amazing art and traveled with the Dalai Lama. And one of his concerns, which is what my question would be, is that his worry was that this incredible traditional culture, quite artistic and beautiful, was how is it going to survive as we move forward out of the 21st century? And he felt that it was already quite fragile.
It is very fragile. See, in order to survive a very ancient culture, we have to have an environment. Since 1951, Tibet was occupied by China. So therefore, in Tibet proper, it is very difficult to preserve and flourish this culture. But since 1959, when His Holiness and Dalai Lama, and like my parents, they escaped into India, they tried to preserve this culture intact. For up to a certain point, during the next 20 years, from 1959 to 1979, Tibet was totally shut down. So during the Cultural Revolutions, there were all sort of upheavals in China, but the culture is being preserved in exile more so. But now that's also changing. The demographic is changing. Inside Tibet, there are more Chinese than Tibetans. But I think that's primarily because for last thousands of years, Tibetan cultures is primarily, the Buddhist culture is being primarily preserved by huge number of monks. In Tibet, the biggest monastery housed over 10,000 monks. Those are all gone now. It's
They're all
history.
gone.
They're all gone.
No, there's none.
No, there are still monasteries,
They're
but you
just
see,
tiny.
after 1979, they start rebuilding it. But the numbers are gone. It's impossible. Like my generation, my parents are willing to send me to the monastery where I had interest to become a monk. Nowadays, the parents in India, for example, Tibetan parents in India, they would rather send their kids to a Western school. So it's a lot of things is changing. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I think if the Tibetan people themselves, whether they are monks or not, try to preserve the Tibetan culture, try to learn, try to live by it. So today Tibetan culture is a living culture because there are people who practice it. If they practice their culture, that's the only way they can preserve. So otherwise it becomes a showcase. Maybe in next. So right now the Dalai Lama is still alive.
Right. What happens
but he's
next?
already 80 years.
Right.
The biggest worry is what will happen after
Right.
the Dalai Lama.
So what do you think? What will happen?
I
Because
think
he's
we
a
have
pretty
no
powerful
choice.
figure.
Yeah, we have no choice. Sometimes I feel that because we have such a powerful
Right.
figure
He's very-
and such a powerful leaders, and after he's gone, there will be a huge vacuum. But right now, Dalai Lama is still living. If we try to learn as much as from him and others, who are similar to his age, this is the time. Probably next 10, 20 years is a crucial time for the preservation of Tibetan
Well,
culture.
it's not like there's an apprentice.
No, it is not.
They have to wait until
For the
that
next-
time,
yes,
and then
for
they
the
have
next
to
Dalai
search.
Lama, yes.
And they search for a young boy again.
Right.
So what happens in the span, just out of curiosity, between the young boy and the powerful leader? That's 20, 30 years, maybe
See,
40.
Now, this is
Yeah.
going to be the first time in the history of Tibet, if the Dalai Lama, let's say, pass away in India, and Tibet's situation remain unsolved with China,
Right.
then it's going to be the first time in history that the Dalai Lama would Dalai Lama would die in exile.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, so the situation
And
is
he would
that's an
remain
area.
in India.
Yeah, and
potentially.
then now the question is, will his rebirth
Right.
be in India? Will be born in India or in Tibet? But it's already going to be a political
Right.
challenge because
Interesting, huh?
China is going to appoint
Very
a Dalai
interesting,
Lama, and
very
Tibetans will
interesting.
not accept it.
In 2011, you held the largest Buddhist ceremony dedicated to bringing world peace. How was that to put it together? And do you see, two questions, do you see doing that again? Because now it's 2015.
As you always say, when you did something very popular,
Yeah.
never redo it. You know,
Exactly.
you can't redo it again. I had this calling since I told you I've lived in different countries. United States, coming to America was the first time that I had sensed a great degree of freedom. I became what I wanted to become. I think it's because of the opportunity and freedom that guarantees this country for all people. And then looking back, being a journalist in Washington, D.C., seeing through the functioning of U.S. government for being the White House correspondent, the Washington correspondent for 8-9 years, the Washington D.C. as an area, as a place, is amazing. These two big White Houses, the President's House and the U.S. Congress, any decisions made in these two houses affect millions, billions of people instantly. So it's very significant. Not all the decisions made there are correct, but at the same time, they make lots of decisions so beneficial, so crucial in this world. And also as a Tibetan, since 1950, it's the early 1950s, United States government's been helping Tibetan refugees and the preservation of Tibetan culture. Every year they give millions of dollars. Like myself, I came to United States, gave me this opportunity. Like me, there are very many Tibetans. His Holiness the Dalai Lama comes to United States thrice a year. So what can Tibetans give? We don't have oil, we don't have biggest gift, but we have a culture. We have the Dalai Lama. So I thought two things. From a Buddhist point of view, this is a very sacred ritual, sacred Buddhist teachings. If it could hold in Washington, D.C., the gathering of thousands of people would bring some sort of positive energy. Having His Holiness the Dalai Lama lead this would magnify this energy. So therefore, Washington, D.C. for me is sanctified in a sense. And also, it's a way of saying thank you for the country and the people of the United States for looking after Tibetans when we need it. So I'm not going to do again, but maybe something similar I might do it. Something similar.
Well, before I ask you my last question, as we look into the night, I doubt another time will you have an interview with all of the crickets and the frogs, and you're quite lucky the coyotes are still sleeping. But I hope that you, while you're here, have a chance to really explore the Golden Door and see its koi ponds and its clipped gardens and all its spiritual beautifulness.
It's amazing this we pass along. Today, it took us 3 hours to drive from LA. We saw a horrible accident where there were dead bodies. And then coming through here, entering the door, the serenity here is just amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
And it's amazing that you are doing, I mean, you are being a guinea pig right now, experimenting all these things, you know. But seriously, I think and everyone who comes here, take this opportunity.
It's pretty special.
So this is what meditation is. Meditation is nothing but finding or creating space in our very busy brain. Try to do that. When you're here, create some space in yourself. That's going to, with this space, this is the right place. When you, and then that you can do, you can create this space while you hike, You can create this space where you have your pedicure done or your manicure done, or even while having dinner, because it's very difficult. Once we go out, we have to be on our regular schedule. But if you take this opportunity, I think this is an amazing place. The environment, the energy, and also often there are lots of people here. All people have similar goal. They want to relax. But what is relax? Physical relaxation is not always the best relaxation. If you can relax mentally, that would really give you a lasting energy. When you go back and say, oh, I did that, so maybe I can replicate it, I can do it again. In your busy life, you can do it. You can do it with your iPhone or tablets or whatever you can do it, We need that. We need more than anything else.
Yeah, that's true.
It's much busier the life nowadays.
So last question, what's next?
Sleep.
What is your world going to look like in the next 5 years?
I'm in a quest, encouraging people to follow a human connectivity with oneself, like I started it in the beginning. Whether we are religious or not religious, it's a different matter. But I think it is very, very important to have a sense of responsibility towards others, because when we talk about I become the center of universe. If that center of universe is broken, then your perspective of universe is broken too. How to keep your perspective solid is by having a solid mindset filled with love, compassion, and forgiveness. See, I always tell people, my quest, I'm still trying. I have a wonderful mind. We all have wonderful mind. But I don't want my wonderful mind become a dustbin for anger, for hatred, for jealousy, for anxiety, for fear. I want this mind where I can store love, compassion, forgiveness, contentment. If I say this is my goal, if I see this happening and one person even plant a seed, that's my aspiration.